All right, this is David here with GamingTrend.com. I have Auverin. You're here on the Smite team here. What is your official job title?
I am the brand manager for Smite eSports.
Brand manager, and you are here in a capacity for the production side of things. What is that? That's kind of a general term. What exactly do you cover here?
So production covers everything that goes to the stage, to the screens. It keeps our streams live. It keeps them running. Down to every graphical element that you see on stream, even down to how players come up on stage. All of that is handled by our production team.
Cool. I mean, like to me, one of the obvious things that is there, and I'm sure you can point out things that I'm not even thinking of yet, but when the casters are actually on there and you see the game, somebody's probably manually controlling the camera that's there to figure out, hey, you know, how does that work from a production side of things, where you're just like, do I focus on the 1v1 that's going on solo lane, or duo lane's doing something, dancing around the Gold Fury? You've got one camera, where do you point it? And how do you guys try to balance that out, or is there a method that you guys use to try to figure out, like, how do you calculate what is the most excitement, or what to show?
So thankfully we have a spectator who has been doing this almost longer than I have worked here. His name is Doug. He is a hero. We love Doug. He's actually very beloved in the Smite community. You've seen the bugs that come in when we show like what talent is on the cast. Doug is right there under him as the spectator. And anytime Doug is not spectating, people are like, where's Doug? I want Doug. But he's a very, very talented guy. He knows this game inside and out. And a lot of that game knowledge is what it takes to know like what's going to be more important, what's going to be more impactful, really where you should be looking, when it's okay to go top down, or when you want to get that third person like over the shoulder look. So for like a day-to-day SPL broadcast, if we were back in the studio, we would just have Doug. We would have just the one observer. But when you're running larger events like this, where it's really important to capture those bigger moments, you tend to run with multiple observers. I mean, some games will go up to 10 observers. We don't really need that many, but we do have 2 observers with us today. So we have Doug, and then we have a backup observer. So in case there's 2 things going on, we're able to show both of them, or at least catch a replay, so that nobody has to miss what happened while we were looking at something else across the map.
When I was walking by the control room earlier, I mean, there's just a ton of people in there, and it looks reminiscent of kind of a NASA mission control style, like an entire wall is nothing but monitors of various screens of, hey, these are the various camera feeds, and then I'm assuming you guys have some sort of mechanism where you can say, all right, let's pull camera feed 3 and make this what's actually going out. What is the, like, from the user that's actually doing that, what is that experience like of just figuring out what to display and when to do that, and how does that work?
Well, it's frenetic. I think it's a good word for it. It is a lot like mission control. I think that's a very good metaphor. We are very lucky to have some guys who were sort of steering the ship, who have done Smite for so many years. I mean, between the 2 of them, we're talking about decades of event experience. And they are so talented, and they can keep really calm under pressure, which is key. Because, you know, we work in a true live environment, which means if something goes on in that control room, or it's up on those screens, you have about 15 seconds before it's live to the entire world. And for people in the venue, it's live immediately. So a lot of what it takes is being very aware of all these moving pieces, and we have people who are specialized in every single moving part. So one person is focused on just this one thing. We have this camera operator, his job is the camera, that is his only job. We have a graphics operator, his job is graphics, that is his only job. And so on and so forth for literally every position that it takes. We have a person dedicated to lighting. We have a person dedicated to just hitting the button on the confetti cannons when it's time to do that. We have people who are dedicated to just making sure that the colors on the cameras are correct. It's a full-time job. So we have our directors and our producers. Our director is the one who actually calls the show. He decides, he quite literally calls the shots. He decides what camera we're going to take, what feed we're going to take, where we go next. And then we have our producer, who is basically his right hand, and the producer is taking all of those cues and giving them to the talent who are on stage so that they know what's going on at all times.
So the fact you mentioned that, it didn't really occur to me, although when you think about it, obviously you have to have some sort of mechanism there, but what is that like? Like what type of information are you feeding to? I'm guessing there's an earpiece in Dolson or Mifflin's ear when they're talking, and you're like, hey, mention this, or is there somebody that's just whispering sweet nothings into their ear the entire time, or
Yeah.
you try them to like, hey, this is something that you should be aware of, or talk about this? How does that work? Is that director or?
Yeah, so our casters are generally aware of what the general flow for the day is going to be, but you can't ask a caster to remember, hey, this ad read needs to go here, this sponsor plug needs to go here, we're about to throw to a break. So that's really what the producer's job is to do. He's listening to the director's cues, understands where we're going to go next in the show, and then he makes sure that talent is aware of that. And it's very similar with if we need to slow roll something to give our production guys a little bit more time to get a screen set up, or if players are trying to make a lobby and they're not doing a good job and it's taking a minute, our producer will get in the ear and let them know, like, hey, it's taking a minute to make lobby, just slow roll and buy us a little bit of time. And where it's most critical, obviously, is when there's tech issues. If a player has to pause, if we have to come out of game for any reason, you can't just ask talent to blindly hold on the desk for an indefinite amount of time. So the producer is really key in communicating to them, this is exactly what's going on, this is when we expect to be back into game, this is how much time you need to fill.
So you definitely try to obviously minimize that type of thing, but like, what kind of stuff pops up? Like, player forgets to use the restroom before they get in the room?
That's really common. We had 2 pauses on the stage this weekend that were because players, instead of turning their mics up on the sound mixer, had turned them down.
Okay.
And then they were like, I can't hear anything. What's going on? So we've been very lucky, especially this weekend. We've run a very clean stage, and all of the tech pauses have been for very minimal things like that.
Very cool. So what's it like to contrast, and I'm guessing it's Hi-Rez Studios where you guys are mainly doing this in Georgia versus here you're in a large venue. They kind of specialize in this thing. I'm thinking since it's an eSports arena, they have equipment or some stuff to help you out. But I mean, just in terms of scale, what does this look like, especially when you mentioned the live audience and that they have a different feed that's not on a delay? I imagine that adds another layer of complication or things you have to manage.
It does. It really does. Normally day to day, we can run a broadcast for the regular SPL day with 5 to 8 people in the production line. We have people who are operating the switcher, which is the board that determines what feed goes up on screen. We have a producer who is just available to help and talk to talent. We have replay, broadcast, spectator, and then graphics. And it's a pretty small crew, but when you come someplace like this, there are so many more moving pieces. We have 6 times as many camera operators as we normally have. We have double the observers. We have 2 producers, and we're working with an amazing team at ESA, and they're not necessarily familiar with Smite, so you have to get very granular in how you communicate these things, because when it's the same people day in and day out, you can say, hey, we're going to hit pickles and buns, and people know that you're hitting picks and bans and that we're ready to rock. But we have to be a little bit more serious when we come into a production like this, and there are so many more moving pieces. So we try to focus our people in on just the one very specialized role.
Okay. Part of something I'm just curious, just as I've got a developer background, is the stage is just crazy. I mean, there's LED panels everywhere. That's stuff you don't normally have. What is the process of like, hey, we've got to figure out on this oddly shaped monitor that's kind of like, angled on the side.
Yeah.
We need a graphics package that can go up there, and it needs to have team logos featured and interactive stuff when characters are getting picked or banned. And what is the process for that like? I mean, what type of control do you have over that? How long does it take to prepare that? Like, I'm just curious from that type of stuff.
It takes a long time. We've been working on our world's broadcast package for about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And if we had it our way, we would have worked on it for about 9, because we really got into crunch time for those last 4 to 6 weeks. But I think the screens out there on the stage are a really good example. And this is where a place like ESA really comes in handy. Normally, we would have to build our own stage. That's what we did at DreamHack the last 2 years. So we had to rent those huge screens. We would have to find people to operate them. But ESA has this pool of talent that just are very familiar with these systems. So, using graphics as an example, those side team screens that you see, we had a graphic designer mock up what we sort of wanted the entire stage to look like. And then we said, okay, we need to get a little bit of motion on these. So we took those mock-ups, we passed them to a VFX artist who did absolutely amazing work. And then the VFX artist, would do a render, we'd get it all through approval, and then we would pass it off to somebody for integration. And graphics integration is where really a lot of that technical knowledge comes in. Because, if the VFX artist has cut it to certain specs and then you put it up on the screen, sometimes it doesn't scale properly. So you have to sort of send it back, re-render it out with new specs, send it back to the integrations guy, make sure that it's scaled up and looking good. And it's just kind of a rinse and repeat process. There's a lot of trial and error.
Figure out there's clipping over here.
Exactly. Like these colors aren't quite right. There's a little bit of like a skip in the animation.
I didn't even think about, color balance of like, hey, this looks great on a monitor that I have where I'm doing my development, but then actually on the stage, the colors are bleeding or they look slightly off. And, so I imagine there's lots of fun little tweaks and iteration to go through there. Is there anything that you would like to just tell anybody who's watching this of just stuff that's behind the scenes that nobody would even think of?
Yes. So before I was doing brand work, I worked as a community manager, which means I was the one sitting in Twitch chat, reading on the tweets, reading the Reddit threads. And people really love to meme on production. Because it's a live production. Things are always going to go wrong. I don't want to say that we're always in crisis, but we're always at the ready because you literally cannot anticipate what's going to happen. We have no idea. So we just have to be very prepared to deal with those issues. And sometimes issues can take a long time to fix. Sometimes an audio issue happens and it's going to take 30 minutes to sit down and figure out, what's going wrong. But people really like to meme on production. They're like, how hard can it be to put on a stream? It's very hard to put on a stream. It's not just you don't just open OBS, throw up some graphics and call it a day. We have people who are dedicated just to do pulling live data and making sure that the data gets updated on screen. We had to build custom tools so that we can show things like those item purchase graphics that we have, like the Totem of Ku, the Gold Fury, and Fire Giant timers. Those are all custom made. And anybody who has tried to organize a group dinner or organize even a team in ranked knows that trying to get multiple people to come together and do the same thing and execute perfectly is really difficult. And with the added pressure of doing it live and knowing that you have very little time to fix it if anything goes wrong, we have an amazing team that works very well under pressure. And it takes a lot to sit down and do this every day. It will take a lot out of you. I mean, we work so hard. We are the first ones in, we are the last ones out. And if you want to meme on us in Twitch chat, that's fine, but just understand that, a lot of production people are really passionate, otherwise they wouldn't be in production. And so it's not as simple as people think that it is. And I wish I could give people more of a peek behind that curtain. So I'm glad that we're doing this, because I think it's important that people know just how the scale of what it takes to put a show on like this.
I mean, most people have jobs where it's like, hey, something came up, all right, we'll get around to it, or we'll fix it eventually, and we can deal with it. But you've got the added pressure of, okay, now we're broadcasting this live to the internet, so you got a bunch of people that are eagerly watching, and oh, by the way, they're gamers, they're very passionate, and they really want to see this, and they're excited.
Yep.
And they have no knowledge of what's going on in the background, so, hey, if the Twitch stream drops, clearly that's just because you guys don't know what you're doing, and it's not, oh, by the way, Amazon Web Services just crashed in our region, or something as stupid as we ran out of batteries on some obscure audio equipment that do you guys have to run fire drills on that to try to prepare for like, hey, we're just going to come up with disasters and see how long it takes you guys to figure out how to fix this? Or
every day that we work is a fire drill.
Okay, so it's just kind of built in, right?
A lot of it comes from experience and repetition, and a lot of it, unfortunately, just comes from having to sit in the fire and burn for a little bit until it gets figured out. But when we do bring new people into the production team, a lot of what we use our off-season for, we are about to go into off-season, which is going to be a couple months long. We're going to do some very low-scale broadcasts, but a lot of that time is going to be spent taking a look at the productions we've done in the last year, taking a look at the studio that we've done them in, and even this event, and being like, okay, where can we improve? What are our real like pain points and our real needs right now? Are there infrastructure upgrades we can make that's going to make this a little bit easier? And then it's taking, especially some of the younger talent. We are working with a lot of really young talent this year who are absolutely amazing. But for more than half my team, this is their first live worlds that they've ever run, and that's really intimidating. But they're doing a great job. But when they get into off season and we do like cross training, we teach them other roles, we teach them new things about how to run a production, and then we will intentionally sit and make things go wrong as part of their boot camp, just to see how they can handle it and help them get those reps in without the added pressure of it actually, going out to the public.
Yeah, is it hard to find people that have the mindset or personality that's just, I thrive in a high-stress environment and staying cool under pressure and not panicking and freaking out and making things worse? And it seems like there'd be a very narrow selection of people that could handle that. It's
really hard. It is a pressure cooker environment for sure, and not everybody has the constitution for it. And that's not a bad thing. Everybody's built a little bit different, but esports people are definitely built very different. What I hear from a lot of people who work in a production like this and then go to like a different job that's a little less fast-paced, that's a little less high pressure, the first thing that their teammates and managers notice about them is how calm they can stay in a crisis. You do not have time to panic. You just have to think about what you can do right in this very moment to fix it. And some people come in, they try it for a year, they're like, I really don't think this is for me, it's not good for my mental health. And then they find other places in the company where they really are happy. But a lot of people, once you get into production, you're a lifer. I think I'm a lifer. I'm going on 5 years here, and I don't know. I think I love that chaos.
Do you get bored if you're in an environment?
I get so bored.
Nothing goes wrong. What do I do?
Oh my God. If I had to work a regular 9 to 5, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I would last very long. But here it's just something new every day, and it's nice to be in an environment where even when things are constantly going wrong, you have to come together to fix them. None of this happens in a silo, and none of this happens without all of us. So I think in spite of it being a very high pressure, trauma bonding kind of situation, you're all in the trenches together. But it does forge like a really deep sense of like teamwork and connection with the folks who are around you. And it's a nice environment to be in, even when it gets hard.
That's great. Well, as a fan as well, I appreciate all the effort that goes into it. And
Thank you.
Please know that the Hug Ops movement is definitely embracing you guys in terms of when things go wrong. It's like, I feel bad for you guys. There's no grief that's going to be. I'm throwing no shade your way. I know there's stuff going on, and it's just I cringe when I read some of the Twitch chat of, clearly they have no clue what they're doing. It's like, you guys have no idea.
Yeah, you have no idea what we're doing, and it just feels so bad because every time something like that goes wrong, it's like we're as mad as you are.
Yeah,
we're as frustrated as you are. I want to see Smite just as bad as you do.
Like, this isn't fun for me. I didn't do this on purpose.
You think I'm just sitting back here like eating a muffin, just having a good time, things are on fire, I'm like, it's fine. No, we're all like standing around a server going, oh my God, what are we gonna do? We gotta get this fixed and we gotta get it done now.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me. Good luck with all the production stuff that's coming up. We've got the final match that's going to be live, and excited to see all the goodies that happen there. So
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great. Appreciate it.
Yep.